All right, hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Chase Thomas Podcast, where I'm still the aforementioned Chase Thomas, coming to you live from Knoxville, Tennessee. Everything School HQ. New threads, who dis. Got some little holes in the Tennessee uniforms now they dropped today, like a little bit of spots. I know you're a big uniform guy, but
what is this? I have not heard about Tennessee's uniforms.
Yeah, they're not, you have to squint to see the difference, but it's like I think they call it the vector or something, where it's very very tight, but it has like little air pockets, air patches in them. I don't know if I'm all in on them. They're you have to squint. You won't notice on TV or anything, but I don't know. They're there. But anyway, Philly University of North Georgia alumni Matt Green is here, as he is at this time each and every week. Matt, good evening, sir. How are you?
Good evening, sir. I'm repping the North Georgia Nighthawks right now.
Okay. What are you? What is that?
My T-shirt game here.
Okay. Do you still have the still undefeated T-shirt?
For the YouTube list. Actually, yeah, Tori was wearing that shirt the other day. The football, UNG football, still undefeated.
A tradition unlike any other.
Damn right.
Well, sir, I'm glad things are going well. Tequila football right around the corner. I know Tequila Georgia's popping, ready to figure out what the Falcons are made of going into this year. So, I mean, what has been the Kroger situation? Like, are you walking in at the coffee shop hearing a lot of Dacula talk? Like, what is the temperature in the room? Are they a 5-5 team, 9-1? Where are they? Where's the temperature?
The town's buzzing. You know, it's this isn't the kind of program that just looks at 5-5 coming into the year. You know, they're expecting to compete for the region championship. That's for sure.
There you go. Well, all things coming up Parkview here with the orange checkerboard. It was always known that I was going to end up in Knoxville, growing up in the Parkview area with the checkerboard, and then making the checkerboard jump later on in my life. But Mike Matthews, 5-star, when folks are hearing this on a Wednesday morning, guess what? Mike Matthews will be committing Wednesday night for his college decision with a couple crystal balls for the Vols, 5-star wideout from my alma mater. So that would be cool. Hopefully that ends up being the case. But we shall see. Matt Green, this is the preview shows. Like, we have to talk about this, because doing the math this past week, thinking about where we're going to be and like how close college football is. And this is the best way of leading in, Matt. How many days are we away from the start of the college football season, where SEC Nation, many were wondering, where was SEC Nation going the first Saturday of the college football season? Think no more. They're going to Nashville to see the dark horse SEC East favorites, Tennessee Volunteers, play the Virginia Cavaliers. But how many days are we away,
Is that the
Matt
best
Green?
game we got the opening weekend is Tennessee, Virginia?
It's not going to be a good game.
I think it's also, Hawaii, Vanderbilt is also like that, either Thursday or Friday. So I think they kind of got like a twofer action in Nashville, if I'm not mistaken. But right now, sir, we are, if you're listening to this on Wednesday morning, this is 45 days till college football season. And I think the best 45, of all time, I think kind of by default, is Archie Griffin, the two-time Heisman winner. But hot take for you, sir. Never should have been a two-time Heisman winner. Absolute just like blasphemy. If you look at this Heisman voting,
wow.
Archie Griffin's second year, like I had it pulled up somewhere and I'm struggling to find it. Yeah, 1975 Heisman. Dude rushed for 1,450 yards and 4 touchdowns, right? Won the Heisman. I don't know how you have 1,400 yards and like 4 touchdowns, but Chuck Muncie of California had 1,460 yards and 13 touchdowns. Finished second. Ricky Bell of USC had 1,900 yards and 13 touchdowns. Finished third. Tony Dorsett. Bell and Dorsett were both juniors. Tony Dorsett had 1,600 yards, 13 touchdowns. Like all three of these running backs had more yards and like 10 more touchdowns. Like, I'm not really sure Obviously, Archie Griffin was on the highest ranked team. They finished fourth in the AP poll that year. But yeah, I feel like it's just trivial at this point because there's guys that could have won it a second time, but it feels like they didn't give it to him because they don't want anyone to join that two-time Heisman club. Like Johnny Manziel, like he just didn't like carry himself like the Heisman way, right? It's like he was better in 2014 and 2013 than he was in 2012, and Jameis won the Heisman that year. It's like I don't know, it's a little questionable. He's like he's in like the Mount Rushmore of college football because of the two-time Heismans, but it's like I don't know if he's deserving.
Well, we're gonna see this year. Like everyone's gonna be looking for reasons not to give Caleb Williams the back-to-back Heisman's because no one wants to do back-to-back, right? Like there's something that's special about it where you're like, no, you can't do that because it's a narrative thing where it's like you even if you're better the following year. I mean, you see it in the NBA MVPs all the time where it's just the narrative matters, and like Joel Embiid like was had a great year, but like we all know Jokic had a better year and Jokic was better, but like three straight MVPs. That's uncharted waters here. And Joel has zero, and Joel is an awesome player. So I think they're always going to be looking for ways not to give you back to back. But you see coming out of the gate here, Caleb Williams having the odds. But like you said with Archie being the number one team, I think that's just a big part of this. And I think the biggest reason
they finished number 4 that year.
Yeah,
so it wasn't necessarily number 1,
but they were one of the best teams in college football, and I think. The thing that's working against Caleb Williams is that I actually think the USC will be worse this year. And I think USC is looking at a 9-3, 10-2. And if that's the case, I just don't think he has a shot at the Heisman. I just don't think he's going to win enough to get USC there. And it's not really his fault. I just not believe in that defense. And we'll get into the Pac-12 and where we're at with those USC Trojans in their final year in the Pac-12, which is, I mean, maybe there's the final year of the Pac-12 in general, based on where the TV deals are going. So that might be it, but yeah.
Who's the best 45 for Tennessee?
It's a good question. I mean, 45 for you. I'm guessing you're just gonna say Boss Bailey.
I think Boss Bailey's got to be the answer there for sure. I was trying to think of a more recent one. I know. Like there's Jarvis Jackson, linebacker for the Richt era.
I think you have to go Johnny Majors, but like,
okay,
it feels kind of like
going
I
way
think it's
back.
probably AJ Johnson.
Okay, Gainesville Red Elephant, AJ Johnson.
AJ was really good, so I think it's probably of note. It's the most known for all time, probably Johnny Majors, but I think AJ Johnson's probably the answer there in terms of best player to wear number 45, Tennessee. It's not a common number really anymore.
I could be missing someone, but I'm thinking definitely Boss Bailey's the best 45 Georgia's had.
Did he start?
Did he start?
Yeah, it was Boss Bailey. How much, like, what did he actually, how many games?
What do you mean Boss Bailey was like a really good player? He's like a multiple year starter. I mean, he was like a second round pick by Detroit. Like,
okay.
He was
I don't
know what you're getting at here. But Boss Bailey was a freak. Him and Tony Gilbert. Tony Gilbert, I think, was usually the one leading Georgia in tackles at that.
That's what I remember more. I remember Tony Gilbert.
Boss Bailey was an outside linebacker back in like the 4-3 days, also.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, he was ridiculous hops.
Blocking
kicks.
UGA. 266 total tackles. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. He had a big time career.
Strong ass Jesse Tuggle career, it looks like to me. Didn't really do it. Didn't get sacks. Couple of interceptions over 3 years. Not really many. He just got a lot of tackles. He just gobbled up tackles.
Jesse Tuggle was on some garbage teams though. Boss Bailey was on an SEC championship, big time defense in 2002. Like as a senior, you bite your tongue, sir.
Yeah, I love Jesse.
He was part of the regime change too. You know. Recruited by Donnan, then stuck around with Richt and won an SEC championship.
Was Pollock recruited by Donnan, or was he Richt guy?
I think he would have to be. I mean, at least at some point, like maybe it was like a Jacob Eason with Kirby, like with Richt and Kirby. You know, that was his first class coming in. So I know David Green was a redshirt freshman, so I know he was already there. Pollock may have been a redshirt freshman too. So I think they may have both been, because I thought they were the same class, right? They're like the same age. They played rec league and all that together. So
Shiloh and
yeah,
South
I
Gwinnett.
think yeah, I think they were both. I think they were both on that team already in 2000, or redshirting in 2000, and then Rick took over in 2001.
Hmm.
Fun fact for you: Quincy Carter got hurt at the end of the 2000 season, and Corey Phillips, I believe, he's like a redshirt senior,
Hmm.
came in and started like the last 2 or 3 games. Donnan had the chance to burn the red shirt of David Green in 2000. And then things could have maybe worked out differently. Maybe DJ Shockley would have had 2 years as the starter at Georgia and,
Hmm.
kind of play a little what if game. But yeah, that could have happened. But Corey Phillips got a couple starts to end his Georgia career. And then Green took over as a redshirt freshman, 01.
Red shirts have changed too. Like you just don't think about it. Like I was like one of the things about Nico is like there's no path to him. It's like what's the point when you get a 4 or 5 star kid in there? It's like all they need is 2 good years and they're out anyway. So it's like you don't have to worry about burning red shirts anymore for your quarterbacks in the SEC or anywhere else where you're like these guys aren't going to redshirt. You don't have to worry about how much we can play them. Like the goal is that Nico plays in 4 games and that's it, and then he's out and you don't need him. But like the idea that like we have to save him that extra year of eligibility, it's like no, all he needs is 2 years in the program and then he's off to the NFL. Like it's all you really are expecting at this point is 2 and out,
No,
so you
that's
don't really worry
definitely
about it. Yeah.
yeah, that's definitely true. It's not the same concern as it once was. And I mean now, I mean you could have played the last 2 or 3 games and still not burn that red shirt too, which
Yeah,
I like that rule that they've put in.
I like it too. Well, Matt Green, with it only being 45 days until college football, which is wild. It's going to be here before you know it. SEC Media Day is going on this week in Nashville here in the home state. And
Not a big SEC media day guy, huh?
I was listening to different interviews. It's not for me. Like it's all just it's just not for me. You're not really getting anything. Like from what I like, folks back in the day when it wasn't as big of a deal, you like guys would. I was listening to the Ball Quest guys talking about it this morning, friend of the pod, Brent Hubbs, and just how much it's changed. And like you could get guys for longer. You could pull like get more information. Like it's just different. Like it's just more. It's more corporate-y. It feels like it's more for media meetups than anything else. It's almost like a media con, a college football, an SEC media con, and that's really what it's for. It's not really the other stuff because like you listen to this, like I was listening to Current, I'm like, what are we doing? This is the biggest waste of time. Like there nothing is coming out here. Like how do you fight complacency? It's like, all right, I don't need to spend my time with this. I'm good. There's better ways
I
to spend
mean,
my time.
it's something that's happened with programs. I've had a little blip here where they're at the mountaintop, and then for
Well, no,
whatever
what I'm
reason they
saying is
don't
just the
last.
questions.
So
It's like Kirby's not going to give you anything. Kirby's ready. Like Kirby's not. Like he's good at this. He's not going to say anything. Josh Heupel is just like we're really happy with a lot of our transfers and stuff like that. It's like all right, it's just I don't know. I just don't think it's
for
necessary
sure.
for me.
No, I mean you're not going to get much out of it, but I feel like it's talking season, man.
It
It's
is
the
talking
fact that
season.
we're like less than 2 months from the season. It's like it feels like it's that final checkpoint. They're like, okay,
Mm.
I can start to get excited about the season. It's like right around the corner. Just see some Georgia players, some Texas A&M players just talking, and you're like, okay, it feels like the season's actually here now. And hearing Jimbo Fisher just talk at a mile a minute, it's like, okay, it's starting to feel like fall again.
It is
Talking a
starting
mile a minute and not really answering any questions, like
a,
that's
tradi-
basically Jimbo Fisher style.
a tradition unlike any other. Matt Green, preview series starting with the Big 12. Here, we're going to get through each of the big Power 5 conferences here. We'll probably throw in Notre Dame with either the Big 10 or the ACC. We'll throw them in with one of them. We'll figure it out. But this is, we're officially in preview season, putting our name to the win-loss totals, and we'll recalibrate that at the end of the year to see how we ended up doing. I'm very excited to do the weekly recounts of me winning the win-loss pool here after just really running away with it this past year in terms of just straight up picking games, which many are saying is the most important outside of the betting odds week over week. But Matt Green, Big 12. This is the last dance for Texas and Oklahoma in this conference. So I thought it was only fair. And this is something that I think is the biggest thing going into this year with Texas. and the biggest story in the Big 12. Is there a team on Texas's tier this year in the conference? Because I don't think there is, and I'm curious if you share the same sentiment.
Well, it's for one, the Big 12 is just like it feels so unpredictable. So I can't like definitively say that, but in terms of just what these teams are on paper, there's no one I can really there's no one I can say that should beat Texas this year, right? Like I know it feels like every year they're like the favorite in the Big 12 and they haven't won the conference since I want to say 2009 and they just for whatever reason, I mean they have made at least one with Ellinger. Did they only make the one back in I think 2018? So I mean they've made like one Big 12 championship in the last decade, 12, 13 years. Like so I feel like this conference just generally just it's not what's expected. I guess Oklahoma had their run of kind of dominating this conference, but Oklahoma they feel like the best challenger. But I mean, we saw them last year, and I'm a big year 2 head coach guy, and we could see Brent Venables in his second year as a head coach. Period. I think Oklahoma is definitely if I'm picking one contender, I that's most likely to challenge Texas. I know it's probably the boring answer. It's got to be Oklahoma.
See, I don't think it is. I think Oklahoma is going to be like a 7-5, 6-6 team again. I don't think they're anywhere near them. Texas obliterated Oklahoma last year, and Oklahoma hasn't made up that much ground on the recruiting front. We'll see what that defense looks like, but I think that defense was bad last year, and I could still see it being subpar. Texas is just, they're better everywhere, and they're older, they're better, they're stronger, they're deeper. I just look at this roster, look at the schedule. It just feels like an 11-1 type year for them. And if you don't break through this year, when are you breaking through? Because now you're going to the SEC. Now it's just going to be a completely different world. I think it's fair for Texas and Steve Sarkisian to have to face a lot of pressure going into this year. Like there is no excuse that Texas should not be in the college football playoff this year. They are that talented. They're that deep. And they're in a conference that is down across the board that is giving them this opening. Oklahoma has had this stranglehold on this conference. TCU lost a bunch who ran away with this conference for the most part up until that Kansas State loss on the last play. But, like, you can't get through Kansas State. Like, you can't do that.
There is one big thing, though, that at Alabama on September 9th.
But that doesn't affect them getting in. Like, you'll still make the playoff.
I mean, that's one, of course, but you got to run the table. You got to win 11 straight games to. But I'm saying if they lose one game in the Big 12 and lose to Alabama, I don't think that season is just a epic failure or anything. I think it's like, okay, Texas is like they're right there and they're building and they most likely win the Big 12. Like they're a 2-loss Big 12 team, Big 12 champion. I think that's a successful season in Austin.
I feel like if they beat Bama, they're going undefeated in the regular season. That's my gut.
I mean, that's definitely possible. I would other than having to go at Alabama, it feels like everything is aligning for them exactly. Like it feels like it's definitely their year.
And that's what's scary if you're a Texas fan, right? Like everyone's looking at this like this is your year.
And other than just playing at Alabama, like that's like the butt is doing a lot of work in that sentence.
The biggest unknown is who going into this year? Who do you think is the biggest unknown, the hardest to pinpoint, the biggest, like, I have no earthly idea? Like, you're going through Phil Steele's manual, you're trying to get a read on this team, but they just feel like a huge unknown that you have no idea how to read. Who do you think is the biggest version of that in the Big 12?
For me, it's Oklahoma State. I feel like I have no idea what to expect at Oklahoma State. Like, Alan Bowman should be the quarterback coming in, and, like, I mean, he hasn't been a starter since 2019, 2020. So, like, if is that the guy who's gonna turn around Oklahoma State football? Like after sitting a couple years at Michigan, like, I just don't know. And they were, I mean, what were they like? Number 10? Were they number 8 at some point last year? Like they were like 7-1, 6-1. Like they were up there and just kind of collapsed last year. And now I feel like coming to this year, I just have no idea. And it's from a not totally negative perspective. Like they could be the team that wins 10 games, or they could be the team that wins 4 games. I feel like I have no idea what to expect out of Oklahoma State this year.
It's just funny because they finished 7-6 last year, right? And Gundy has made it a career out of overachieving. I think he is somewhere like we didn't even have him in our top 25 coaches, and it's kind of funny because it's like I think years ago.
Did I not have him? I thought I did have him in
Gundy.
there. Did I not?
You didn't have Gundy.
Oh man, I think I do have Gundy though. That may be an oversight because I think he is top 25.
But that's what I'm saying. Like we overlooked him, and it's like this. That's like the whole situation with Oklahoma State. Like we forget Matt Green. 2 years ago, they were a play away from maybe in the college football playoff. Like they were right there and had a fantastic season with Chuba Hubbard and company. But like, I just wonder, is Alan Bowman the guy who's going to like, I'd feel better if Spencer Sanders was back. Like that's one of those where it's like, that was a marriage that shouldn't have split apart is what I think about with them, where I'm like, I don't really get this because Spencer doesn't look like he's going to start at Ole Miss. And he could have just played one final year at Oklahoma State where he's had a lot of success and was a play, like we said, away from making the college football playoff. They're going to have a good running game with Ollie Gordon. I think the offense should be better. They're much more of a ground and pound team than they were back in the day with the Zach Robinson company. But like this was from Athlon Sports that was interesting. Oklahoma State hasn't had a losing season since Mike Gundy's debut in 2005. So we're nearing 20 years without a losing season. For Gundy.
Oh no, we had Gundy on our list.
Okay, we did have Gundy.
I had him at 15. You had him at 16.
Okay, good. All right, I feel better about that.
There you go.
But they replace a bunch of starters on defense. They only have 2 returning starters and a new coordinator in Brian Nardo. So good schedule. That's always good at the Big 12. And I just feel like Oklahoma State. That's a fair point where it's like I wouldn't be surprised if Oklahoma State was in the Big 12 title game. I also wouldn't be surprised if they're 7-6 again. I would be surprised if they're like 3-9 and they're actually bad and one of the worst teams in the Big 12. I feel like do you agree with this? I feel like Oklahoma State's a souped up best case scenario of Mississippi State of the Big 12. Do you think that's a fair comp?
No, I think their ceiling is so much higher than Mississippi State. I feel like Oklahoma State, like maybe just because I remember the Zach Robinson, the Des Bryant years, but like it feels like Oklahoma State, there's nothing really, other than Oklahoma, like there's nothing really keeping them from being like a top like 15 program in the sport, or like maybe just central on the Big 12 historically being like one of the 3 or 4 best programs in the Big 12, right? Like you would say over the last decade.
I mean, Jimmy Johnson.
They've probably been better than Texas over the last decade.
Barry Sanders in the 90s. I feel like they're a pretty solid program. But what I'm saying is like they don't have the resources. Mississippi State, lowest in resources, generally speaking, in the SEC West. Oklahoma State, lowest in NIL, I think, in the Big 12 right now. They just seem like they're the team that does the most with the least. I just feel like they have a passionate fan base. The fan base comes. They are just always talked about as like, is this the year they fall off? You always forget about them and where they're going to fit in the conference. And you're like, oh, don't look now. But they're right there. Again, they're at 10-2, 9-3. They just won't go away. They crank out their 8 to 10 wins. And you're just like, how did that happen? I feel like that's Mike Gundy. And I think that's probably what Mike Leach and Dan Mullen kind of had cooking at Mississippi State, where it's just kind of solid to great coaching. It's just under the radar. They do a lot with less. I think they're a lot.
Is the T. Boone Pickens money? Is that gone? I thought Oklahoma State had some money.
No, they've never really had that because like you go back, Jimmy Johnson left Oklahoma State for Miami for this kind of situation. If you read the Cowboys book by Jeff Pearlman on that whole situation, but it's fascinating. I just feel like it's always been a spot where like they've never had the resources and recruiting to actually have the blue chippers to win a title, but they've had enough and developed well enough that they're always in the thick of things, at least in the Big 12.
Yeah, and I wonder, what this new Big 12 is really going to do for Oklahoma State, because the in-state, obviously you saw what Texas Tech A&M became once A&M joined the SEC. It really elevated A&M, so maybe it makes Oklahoma even more superior than they already were to Oklahoma State. But what you got to keep in mind is potentially winning the Big 12 regularly, Oklahoma State could potentially get just as many playoff berths as Oklahoma does over the next 10 or so years, just kind of based on the conference and the automatic qualifiers and that sort of thing. So it's not necessarily the worst thing for Oklahoma State. Obviously the money is just massive and that's going to have just huge repercussions down the road. But, in terms of potentially, I would say just looking at the programs on paper, I'm not taking more than like 2 of these new Big 12 teams as just overall programs and like ceiling over Oklahoma State. Like they have a pretty consistent tradition over in recent history of winning 10 plus games.
Fair. That's fair. So we'll see. I like that pick though with Oklahoma State. Best odds to you to hit their win-loss over when you go through the list here of the 14 teams here in the Big 12. Who do you think has the best odds in your estimation to hit the win? You can do positive, hit the over, or hit the under. Who are you most certain of?
This is maybe the toughest conference to do this in, honestly. Because I look at Baylor and 6.5 feels a little low, and I like Baylor, but I'm like, I don't know how many tangible things I can really point to. I feel like they should be better than 6 wins. But I look at Kansas. If Jalen Daniels can stay healthy, like 6.5. I think Kansas should be able to easily do win 7 games this year. Like obviously his health completely derailed last season, but I don't know. You look at the preseason first team All Big 12. Like they got like 3 guys on first team. Kansas does. Like I don't know. The vibe in Lawrence, Kansas feels a little different right now. So I think I might go Kansas on the 6.5. I'd go over.
Lance Leipold deserves a statue just for the fact in the year of 2023 on a college football podcast, Matthew W. What's your middle name?
Walker.
Matthew Walker Green comes on this very show and proclaims among 14 FBS Power 5 schools in the Big 12 Conference, with everything we know about the Kansas Jayhawks, he put more stock and more belief that they would hit the over on a 6.5 win total than anyone else in the Big 12. We have seen some of the absolute worst of college football with the Kansas Jayhawks over the years. And if that's not enough for Lance Leipold to get a lifetime contract, like get Jimbo Fisher money, it's the fact that there is that much belief in what he's doing and that they're going to win more than 6 games and be the best bet to win and hit the over of all these Big 12 teams. That's a wild state of affairs, and I don't necessarily
to be
disagree
fair,
with
you. the numbers do affect that because some teams
like
being
2
at
years
7
ago they were like a game and a half.
I think they were at
1.5.
2.5 going into last season. Yeah, that is definitely crazy where they've come from. But I mean, Texas should be the safe one, right, at 9.5. But Texas is just Texas, and it's like I don't know. Until they prove I can trust them, it's hard to trust them. But they should be good for that 10.5 or for that 9.5. But Oklahoma feels a lot riskier at the 9.5 because 9-3 seems like a realistic thing that they could do this year. But I don't know. There's some tough numbers in this conference.
I think Oklahoma at 9.5 and hitting the under is my best odds. Like I would pound the under for. They're not winning 10 games. Like Oklahoma winning 10 games would absolutely floor me. I think that one's way too high. The Oklahoma one's off. Like that is just a bad read, bad bet. Don't do it. Stay away. Oklahoma at 9.5, I would say among this is like, no.
Yeah, and at the very least, just the fact that they're the exact same number as Texas going to that, that doesn't make any sense to me either.
They're just getting like almost like a hedging of like who they've been forever, and it's like I don't know.
I think it's fair. Like Oklahoma does have a tradition, and they're buying into that year 2 head coach thing. That's what it is.
6.5 teams. What is your stat here, Matt Green, and why folks who are previewing and thinking about what this Big 12 is going to look like this fall? What is the importance of 6.5?
Yeah, we were just talking about the Kansas Jayhawks there at 6.5 this year, and who cares about teams that over under 6.5 win total? Why are we even wasting time talking about teams that are preseason 6.5? Well, if you go back to last season, the two teams that played in the Big 12 championship, TCU and Kansas State. Kansas State won. I don't know if everyone remembers that, but Kansas State did win that game. Both of them were 6.5 over under coming into the season, and they played for the Big 12 championship. So of the four teams on our list this year at 6.5 wins, we got Baylor, Iowa State, Kansas, and Oklahoma State. Which teams are the most likely to be the dark horse teams that get into the Big 12 championship this year?
Well, I think Oklahoma State at 6.5 stands out. I think they're probably the first one that comes to mind here, and it kind of speaks to like when they're doubted and like when people are wondering. It's like, oh, Oklahoma State, Alan Bowman was healthy, they ran the ball really well, and the defense worked out, and just like that, they're 10-2 and in the Big 12 title game. I think they're the first one that comes to mind. But the other one that I cannot shake, it's not Iowa State, it's not Kansas, it's Baylor. Like, it wouldn't surprise me. Like, I'm not high on Baylor coming into this year, but if I'm looking for a 6.5, like TCU type bump, Baylor is probably the safest bet to me of that kind of jump with Dave Aranda here, because I think it's a big year for Dave Aranda in this group. And we've seen success with their offensive coordinator and what they try to do there. I think they had really bad quarterback play last year, and that kind of plagued them. But maybe they're better in that regard this year. Maybe the offense gets back to form. Dave Aranda is one of the best defensive minds in the sport. Like, you could see it. You could see a scenario where they overachieve and they're right there in a 10-2, 11-1 type scenario. Once again, I think it's one of the two between Oklahoma State and Baylor there for me. Is it the same for you?
Yeah, I'm thinking the same thing. Just kind of how we were just talking with Oklahoma State, just how volatile they kind of seem. Like the ceiling could be high, but the floor could also be real low. And that would be a rematch of the 2021 Big 12 championship game. But yeah, I mean, Baylor is, it's hard to know exactly. Blake Shapen has had his moments. Is he still the starter?
Yes.
I can't even keep track of their quarterback room, but 2021 he showed some signs. 2022 he was whatever. So I don't know. They're probably gonna have to lean on that running game. So Dave Aranda, I just am a believer in Dave Aranda, maybe more so than he's actually proven to be a good head coach.
Yeah, I agree. The under here. Who do you think is the best to hit the under among all of these, Matt Green? Who do you think is the most likely to hit the under? I had Oklahoma here. Who is it for you?
I'm going with UCF at 7.5. I feel like there's something about UCF that's like they're not going to the big boys necessarily. Like, this Big 12 isn't like some juggernaut conference the way it's currently constructed, but there is something to playing just a significantly tougher schedule than they've been playing the last, forever. So I think the Big 12, as much as it's kind of, I don't know, it feels like a conference that gets disrespected because they all play each other and they all beat each other. But I think it gets kind of a little underrated on how tough of a conference it really is, tough top to bottom. And obviously you're going to have a couple of other teams joining you, like with BYU and Cincinnati and Houston. I don't know. I'm not looking at Cincinnati, UCF schedule off the top of my head. I don't know who they play.
Here's two teams they don't play, Matt Green. Texas and Oklahoma.
Oh, is that right? I didn't even know that. Well, that's not a good start. Or that is a good start for them.
It kind of startled me because they are my lock of an over, like 7.5. They're winning 8 or 9 games. They might win 10 in this schedule. They're at Boise early, which will be interesting. Kent State at home, Villanova at home, at K-State. That'll be a big one. That's probably going to be their toughest game. Oh, they do have Oklahoma. Excuse me. They do have Oklahoma on the road. Sorry. I missed that. They do have Oklahoma. The Dylan Gabriel Bowl. But you get Baylor at home, at Kansas, West Virginia at home, Oklahoma State at home, at Texas Tech, at Cincy, Houston at home. This looks like an 8 or 9 win schedule if everything breaks right for UCF. But avoiding Texas is huge for them in year one.
No, that's definitely big. I don't think I don't think they're a team that's in a position to be like counting wins and like, oh yeah, they'll beat them, they won't beat them. Like, I don't think we have any idea of what UCF really is going into a Power 5 conference. Like, they go 9-5 last year. They played 14. Okay, they went 9-5. You don't see that record very often. I had to double take that. 9-5 last year, like playing in the AAC, like they lost to Louisville, like a pretty mediocre to maybe bad ACC team last year. Like lost at East Carolina, lost to Navy, lost at Tulane, lost to Duke. It's like they didn't play many Power 5 teams. They did beat Georgia Tech, if we want to count them as a Power 5 team.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, so they don't play a lot of Power 5 teams, that this schedule is going to be significantly tougher. Like they could be a solid team and only win 6 or 7 games, but they're playing a different level of competition than they've always played. So I stand by it, sir.
Okay, I'm a Knight believer. You're not a Golden Knight believer.
I call them Central Florida. Apparently that's disrespectful to them.
National champs just a few short years ago. Who wins the most games? Speaking of UCF, among the 4, 7.5 for UCF, 5.5 for Cincinnati, 5.5 for Houston, and where's the other one? BYU 5.5 as well. Who do you think wins the most games of the new Big Four? I have UCF. Who do you think it is?
If I'm going with those 4, I think I probably do still go UCF. Cincinnati, I'm a little worried about Cincinnati. I mean, they haven't been 5.5 bad since like 2017, but I think they might fall off a little bit. I think
worst offseason coaching hire, Scott Satterfield.
Fickle may have gotten out at the right time. So I would probably say UCF between the new 4. Although BYU, I think BYU also is just, they're sneaky. BYU's a sneaky team.
Yeah, I'm interested. It's a big jump to go from Mountain West for them and see what they're going to look like on a weekly basis. I'm very curious to see what BYU do. I think they're the most interesting team in the Big 12. And Tennessee was supposed to open at BYU this year, and they did Virginia instead. At BYU,
Cowards.
It would have been a lot more fun in Provo. Coach,
definitely a bucket list stadium right there.
That's what I'm saying. Like, it would have been cool. I might have even gone to that. Coach most likely to get fired of all the coaches here, because someone's going to get fired in this conference at some point this year. Who would you say is the most likely to get fired?
Got to be Neil Brown, right?
Yeah.
I think, for one, I don't know how many guys are really on the hot seat looking in this conference. But West Virginia, like 5.5, their preseason win-loss, like they're just at the very bottom of the Big 12. Like West Virginia is a solid program. Like we grew up with West Virginia being a respectable program. Oh, well, we grew up in the heyday, maybe that Pat White, Steve Slayton era, but they were at least always just a respectable program, and they're not the kind of team that needs to be at the bottom of a conference like this. Obviously, they weren't always in the Big 12, so being in the Big 12 hasn't necessarily been kind to them. But I expect more from West Virginia, and they feel like the most likely to probably have another bad season and just go ahead and cut ties.
Yeah, I think it's Neil Brown, but I also could see Dana Holgorsen. Like Houston's kind of fallen off, and I think there's a lot more potential at Houston. I think they can do better than Dana Holgorsen at this point. So I think if he has a bad year, he's someone to monitor. Like if WVU overachieves a little bit, and Houston's bad again on defense, and it's just kind of a mess, and they go 5-7, miss a bowl game. Like I think Dana, being the first coach fired or being not making it through this year would not surprise me either. But yeah, because I think Houston could be a lot bigger and make a big name for themselves in the Big 12 with the right coach. And I don't think Dana Holgorsen's the right long-term coach there.
What about Matt Campbell? Is the seat heating up on him?
No, he's just like, he gets a lifetime job there. Like that's a tough place to win.
He'll be there as long as he wants to be there. Yeah. And that's a team we haven't talked about at all either. And with Matt Campbell, it feels like every couple years they spring up and surprise some people. But I don't know. I'm not thinking too much about Iowa State this year.
No. But that's when they can get you. What does the schedule look like for you for each team here? So we're going to run through these, Matt Green, each of these 14 teams and their over under, and put it on the line how many wins we think, and if they hit the over and under for these respective teams. When you look at the schedule and you think about this roster and what they've added, portal, recruiting, everywhere else, we're going to go alphabetically, Baylor, 6.5, Matt Green. Do they hit the over, and what is that number, and why are you optimistic or pessimistic about the Bears in 2023?
Well, at a conference, you got Utah, so that's not a great start. The fact that they aren't going to have just a cakewalk at a conference. They can't just stack those 3 wins. So, I mean, we obviously have been just trained to look at who's got Texas and who's got Oklahoma on their schedule. They do miss Oklahoma, but they do have Texas early in the season. I'm leaning towards the over on Baylor on 6.5. I think this team can be 7, 8, maybe even better this year, and maybe even compete for a Big 12 championship. So yeah, let me go over on Baylor.
It comes down to Shapen. He was bad last year, and I mean they brought in Sawyer Robertson from Mississippi State to compete with him, but I think it's still going to be his job. But like, I don't know. The defense took a step back last year. I don't know. We'll see what Matt Pallage does there. I mean, because he's gone. I don't know, man. I look at this group. I'm just not a Blake Shapen guy. I think that's what it comes down to for me. I don't think he is one of the better quarterbacks in this conference. I think he's kind of fallen by the wayside. Maybe Sawyer Robinson flips things a little bit here, but I just don't believe in him. And I think this feels like they ended the last season on a 4-game losing streak. And you look at how those games ended, especially that TCU game, which was just bonkers, one of the best games of the 2022 college football season. But I just look at this and I'm just like, I don't know. This feels like they're going in the wrong direction. I think you have to go up and down with some of these teams. And I just think I could see a scenario where it gets ugly in a hurry for Baylor this year with Utah at home, Texas at UCF, Texas Tech, who I think is going to be good, and even at Cincinnati. You go back to back late in the year at Kansas State and at TCU. Don't like that. That's terrible squashed situation for Baylor there. I don't know. This feels like a 6-6-ish team to me again, and I wonder if Dave Aranda gets in the hot seat for that because of how close what he did in the Big 12 2 years ago. But I don't know. They're a hard team to forecast, but everyone can't break right. So I'm gonna go Baylor actually underachieves again, and they hit the under. So I'm gonna go 6-6 for Baylor in 2023.
Yeah, 5 ranked teams on their preseason ranked teams on their schedule. Got to go at the Bounce House in late September too. So we'll see. Let's keep it moving.
Where are we going next, Matt Green? Are we going to the BYU? Man, it's so weird. The Big 12 BYU Cougars 5.5. Matt Green, where are you leaning?
Let's see. I was trying to pull their schedule up. You lead us off.
So BYU, another team here where it's like this is going to be a big adjustment for the Cougars, but I don't hate their schedule. You look at this, you get Texas Tech at home, it's a big one. At West Virginia, it's not as scary as it once was. You get Oklahoma at home, which is nice. Iowa State at home, which is nice. You got to go to Texas, but you probably weren't winning that game anyway. You got to go to TCU. It's tough. At Arkansas, that's probably a loss. But you open with Sam Houston State, Southern Utah, 2-0. At Kansas, toss-up game. Cincinnati at home's great. This looks to me like a pretty manageable first year in the Big 12 welcoming party to the conference. And this feels like they're going to hit the over. I wouldn't doubt Kalani Sitake, who's one of the better coaches in the sport. I don't think they're going to miss a bowl game. 5-5 feels too low. This feels like a 7-5 schedule to me. So I'm going to go 7-5, and they actually hit the over, even losing their QB to the NFL. They sneaky just replace and move on. Like they're just going to have a good offense. They're just going to have a good defense. They hired a new associate head coach who's kind of a legend in the FCS ranks, and I want to pull up his name because he was a big offseason under the radar hire for them, and I want to get his name, but he was at, I believe, Weber State for a really long time, and it's going to be running the defense, because that was the thing about BYU, which was weird last year, is their defense was terrible. The offense was still really good by and large, but the defense really took a huge step back, and that was kind of their downfall. But it's just Jay Hill is his name. So he's going to be the defensive coordinator, and he was the head coach at Weber State for 8 years, and it's just a big addition for them. So I'm pretty optimistic about that hire and what he was able to do there, and the fit for him. And I think that'll be big. So I'm gonna say they hit the over 7-5 ish for their first year.
I mean, you look at just their road schedule, and you got at Arkansas, at Kansas, at TCU, at Texas, at West Virginia. As bad as West Virginia might be, going into Morgantown is never easy. At Oklahoma State as well, like that's a tough road schedule. Like they have to go basically undefeated at home, just about and they play Oklahoma at home, Texas Tech. So I'm not sure because I think Arkansas is a definite loss. So get a loss out of conference, I think isn't a good start. So I'm going to go
rather
under.
get the toss-up games at home? Like I think a lot of the games you just mentioned on the road, they were not winning anyway. Like I would rather not burn a home game against Texas.
But West Virginia is a team that they should be, that they probably should be better than. But in Morgantown on the other side of the country, for your classic Big 12 matchup of BYU and West Virginia, that could be a tricky one. I'm gonna go under.
Ooh, okay. UCF 7.5. We talked about them a little bit here. You know where I'm leaning. I think this feels like an 8-4, 9-3 schedule for John Reese Plumlee's team and Gus Malzahn here. Does it feel like they're hitting the over for you, Matt Green?
I'm gonna go under on Central Florida here. At Boise State, second game of the season, like that's not gonna be easy. At Kansas State, at Oklahoma, at Cincinnati, at Texas Tech, like they got some tough road games as well. So I like I said, I don't want to beat a dead horse, but I think they might be in for a rude awakening, playing a full Power 5 schedule.
Wow. I don't know, man. They were good last year. Gus has got that thing cooking. He doesn't really have those bad years. Like 8-4 is like kind of his bread and butter. Like he loves those 8-4, 9-3 type years. I think he's going to be right there with this UCF team.
Yeah, I'm really curious to see what they do. Just from we've seen so much conference realignment. So just from just a knowledge perspective, knowing what a team going from a group of 5 to a Power 5 conference in 1 year, just seeing what that competition level is. Because we all have our opinions on how much superior that product is to the G5, but some of these really good G5 teams could potentially come in and compete in these Power 5 conferences. So it'll be an interesting just experiment this year in the Big 12.
For sure. Cincinnati 5.5. I feel like we're gonna share the same. I think the Scott Satterfield hire was a disaster and one of the worst, more uninspiring hires this offseason cycle. I don't think he's long for Cincy. I think they've just gradually lost a lot of dudes to the NFL. A lot of them lost important guys to Wisconsin, both on the field and in the coaching ranks. I would drill the under for the Cincinnati team. I don't think they're going bowling. I think this is going to be a 4-8, 3-9 type disaster for Cincinnati right out of the gate here. Where are you leaning with Cincy?
Yeah, I think it's hard to see them going over the 5.5. I'm hoping they can start 3-0 because if they can, Oklahoma coming in for their first Big 12 game, that could be a crazy atmosphere in Nippert Stadium, as we all know what it's called. But yeah, I just look at Cincinnati's schedule and I don't see this team winning more than 5 games. So yeah, give me the under as well.
I don't know. Is Emory Jones going to be their starting quarterback this year? That's wild.
Yeah, that's so. How many schools is he on now? Is that 3?
I think that's.
We're on 4.
Arizona State, Florida,
yeah,
and then Cincinnati because he started at Florida, right? Yeah.
Okay.
Goodness
and
gracious.
Alan Bowman on school number 3 as well.
Corey Kiner's back though. Miles Montgomery be a solid 1-2 punch. Emory Jones isn't bad. He's okay. But I don't like anything about any of this. No, this just doesn't look great.
Yeah, I think Cincinnati I think they're a step behind where UCF is coming into the Big 12. So I think they're kind of in a similar position of
they've
been
to 5 straight bowl games. So that streak's on the line this year. Fickle had them rolling into 6 wins.
Yeah, and if Scott Satterfield plays his cards right, the Cincinnati job leads to big time Power 5 job. So We've seen Michigan State. We've seen Notre Dame. We've seen multiple guys go to
Tennessee.
Notre Dame, right? Tennessee. We've seen Fickle go to Wisconsin. So Cincinnati is a great stepping stone job. So we'll see what he can do with it. But I don't know about so far in year one.
Houston 5.5 as well. I think I'm going the under. I don't like where they're going either. I think Houston and Cincinnati are both going to be like, if I'm optimistic about where BYU and UCF will be in the Big 12 right out of the gate. I'm not optimistic about Houston and Cincinnati out of the gate here. I lean the under. I'm going to go 5-7, 4-8 feels right. And I would not be surprised if this is the last year for Dana Holgerson in Houston.
Fun fact for you:
Uh-oh.
12 games the Houston Cougars are going to play. That's pretty standard. I think we're all playing 12 games. 10 of those games are going to be in the state of Texas. They play UTSA, Rice, and Sam Houston State out of conference. Just keeping it all in the state. But yeah, I'm kind of with you on Houston. I'm not really high on them and Dana Holgerson. 8-5 a year ago, but I think 5.5. They seem like there's a potential for them to go bowling, but I feel like they're kind of in that Cincinnati level with. They're probably gonna be near the bottom of the Big 12. Man, I'm picking against all of these newcomers. That was 4 in a row. I picked unders on all of them.
You're not a fan of the Big 12 this year. Houston's defense sucked. And I think part of it for me, I'm just mad because I picked them to, like, they had a dark horse undefeated type season on the table there with their group where I was like, you could sell.
Yeah, you called that last year.
They had this week schedule where I was like, they could take advantage of this, and there's a path to them just being in the college football playoff conversation in late November. And they completely pooped the bed. And 32 points a game given up. The defense was horrific. And you forget, Matt Green, part of that was like they were 12-2 in 2021. They were right there for a New Year's Six Bowl. And now they bring in Donovan Smith, the transfer from Texas Tech. But, I mean, Texas, TCU, Texas Tech, Kansas State, Oklahoma State on this schedule, I just think they're going the wrong way. And with Tank Dell gone, Clayton Tune gone, I don't know, man. I think those are just going to be really, really difficult to replace, and I think this defense is still going to suck. So I don't know. I'm pretty dubious about Houston figuring it out, and I think they're going the wrong way here. So I'm selling the Houston Cougar stock as well.
All right, put it on the board.
You got to get some overs here in a second. Iowa State, 6.5. Is this where the over first comes in, Matt Green? Or are you going under again?
This is not where I did go over on Baylor.
That was the first one.
But yeah, I've gone a bunch of unders in a row. I got to go another under. I'm not a believer in Iowa State this year. I just, with what they have coming back, like they were the worst team in the Big 12 a year ago. Well, was West Virginia worse? They're right there near the bottom.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. I think this conference, as much as I'm picking against all the newcomers, I think this conference did get more difficult, and so I don't think that bodes well for Iowa State.
I actually don't hate this schedule. I mean, Texas at home late. I'm just circle that one, folks. That one might get wonky. I don't like that they end at Kansas State. What are we doing with these endings? Like, why? I don't know. Whatever. I'm not gonna get my hours. Iowa at home. That's good. They get the Cyhawk trophy at home.
That's got a name, right? Iowa State,
Cyhawk,
Kansas
right?
State. That's like the. No, that's
it?
Iowa State.
Yeah,
I think that's the Iron Skillet, the battle for the Iron Skillet, or something like that. I think that's a rivalry, right?
Okay.
Keep talking.
There's a path to them being 4-0 going to Norman in late September. And then you just have to get 3 of TCU at home, who I think will take a step back this year, at Cincy, Kansas at home, and then at BYU is a toss-up. And then at Kansas State, we'll see what Kansas State looks like. That's probably a loss. But, like, at Baylor, who knows? We took the end of the Baylor. 6.5 is interesting. Hunter Deckers, I think, is solid. I think the defense is going to be good. Once again, they're going to be in a lot of these games. And they have bounce back potential. I think they're going to be like a 7-5 team. It's going to be ugly. I'm going to hit the over on Iowa State. I think a lot of people have written them off in Matt Campbell's bunch. I think they go 7-5 with the schedule. Give me the over for the Clones.
Giving you the over, and I want to correct myself here. All the TCU and SMU fans will be furious with me. That is the battle for the Iron Skillet, TCU and SMU. Iowa State and Kansas State, however, have played every single year since 1917. So a lot of goes back to the Missouri Valley Conference. But yeah, give me the under on Iowa State. Not feeling it.
Kansas goes from 2-10 in 2021, 6-7 the next year. First bowl appearance since 2008. Here's the thing about Kansas and this 6.5. Kansas, I think, I think it's fair to say. I'm just going to say it. I think they have the best quarterback in the conference. What does that mean for Kansas? If they have the best quarterback in the Big 12, I mean, I think that's huge. If Jalen Daniels is healthy for 12 games, I think 7-5 is very doable. I think I'm going over on Kansas too. I just look at this group. I look at the schedule. I don't hate it. Lance Leipold is going to get the most out of this group again. Man, I don't know. I just look at this. Devin Neal's back. A lot of important dudes back. I think this offense is going to be electric once again. I don't know. I like this. I think they're going to hit 7-ish wins. The schedule's a little bit more difficult than a year ago, but 7-5 I think is doable. So I'm going to ride the wave of like when you have the best quarterback in the conference, I think that's enough to go bowling and at least 7 wins. So give me 7 for the Jayhawks. Is this where you go positive?
Absolutely, sir. I think there is a chance that Jalen Daniels is the best quarterback in the Big 12, but I would still go Ewers if I'm deciding.
But Ewers is a projection.
He's a dynamic.
Like Ewers is a projection.
Well,
we don't
Daniels
know.
is a projection too.
No, we've seen the best of Jalen Daniels. Jalen Daniels was a really good player last year.
But it was what, for like 4 games? Like it was a very small sample size.
He played more than 4. Jalen Daniels.
He did come back from injury. Yeah, so he only missed like what did he play last year?
He had like a 544-yard game at one point. I think Jalen played more than that. I'm trying to think how many games he's played.
Yeah, he's definitely it is part projection. I mean, that's what we're doing here, right? So Quinn Ewers, I think, has the chance to take a huge step.
He played 9 games.
Yeah. Okay. Jalen Daniels is a dynamic player for sure. And I think he potentially could be the best quarterback in the Big 12. And if you have the best quarterback in the conference, I think you're winning more than 7 games. So I do. I like Kansas this year, and I'm going to take the over on them.
I love that they get Oklahoma at home. I think they're beating Oklahoma.
Yeah, I could see it for sure.
Kansas
they almost beat
State.
Them with Rattler and Caleb Williams.
That's true. 8.5 for Kansas State. Kind of high. It's weird, even though they just won the Big 12. But you're like, all right, we're expecting. Kansas State just feels like the team that does better when it's like 6.5 for them before the year, and then they win 10 games. When it's high like this, I get a little antsy, where I'm like, I don't know. A lot of people are talking about Kansas State repeating as Big 12 champs, and I'm like, oh, this is not how Kansas State rolls. This is not where you want to be. I'm actually going to go under for Kansas State. I feel like 8-4 is kind of where they land this year. I think they take a slight step back. I think TCU and Kansas State take a step back in this Big 12 this year. Neither make it back to the Big 12 title game. Do you share that sentiment, and are you going under for the Wildcats?
Yeah, I was kind of going back and forth on this one because at a conference, you got Southeast Missouri, Troy, and at Missouri, it's like I think they kind of blasted Missouri last year, if I remember correct. So I mean, I think they should have 3 wins at a conference. UCF, they host them for their last game in September, but they don't have Oklahoma on the schedule. They do go at Texas in November, but I don't know. I think this is a manageable schedule. Like I like Will Howard. He took Kansas State to the next level last year. Obviously, Deuce Vaughn was like the heart and soul of that team, of that offense. But I like Kansas State. 8.5 doesn't seem too high because I feel like 9-3 they still might miss the Big 12 championship. It's not even necessarily a guarantee, but I think they're going to be one of the better teams in the Big 12. So give me the over on Kansas State. 9-3 this year.
They lose a bunch in the secondary. That scares me. I think the secondary gets torched, and I think the Big 12 is going to be a high passing league. Like, I think they lose to Kansas, for instance. I think Kansas is going to torch this Kansas State defense. I think Trayshawn Ward is a sneaky big impact transfer in the conference, like from Florida State. He's going to replace Deuce Vaughn. I could see him really, really excelling in the Little Apple here. I like Will Howard. He showed a lot of stuff filling in for Adrian Martinez last year. Obviously, it's completely his team now, but I don't know. I feel like this defense takes a step back, and I think it's just going to be kind of a gap year here for the Wildcats. I think they're going to be good. I think Chris Kleiman's like one of those coaches where there's no path to them being bad. They're gonna have a high floor each and every year. Where like 7-5, 8-4 is the worst case scenario. Maybe 6-6, but like they're going bowling every year with Chris Kleiman and the way they play, the way they coach, and all that kind of stuff. I think they take a slight step back. I think 8-4. So I'm gonna hit the under on Kansas State this year.
All right, put it on the board.
Oklahoma 9.5 here. Just like lock of the year. They're going under, Matt Green. The Oklahoma Sooners are not winning 10 games this year. Just absolutely not doing it. Dylan Gabriel has to stay healthy for 12 games. We'll see it. I see it to believe it. A really weak wide receiver room. We'll see what happens. They need somebody to break through. Eric Gray's not back at running back. We'll see what happens on that front. The defense sucked last year. Still, I think it's not going to be great again this year. Tough schedule. I don't see it, man. Like, I don't see the Sooners being one of the best teams in the conference, and that's what 10-2 is. So give me the under on the Sooners.
Yeah, don't even have George on that schedule. It'd be a lot more difficult if the Bulldogs were coming into Norman. But yeah, I 9.5 just it's a little too rich for my blood. I think Oklahoma is going to be improved this year, but it feels like a 9-3 type of season, and maybe not even that good if Dylan Gabriel can't stay healthy. So yeah, give me the under as well on Oklahoma at 9.5. I think there's a chance they go 9-3 and do still end up in the Big 12 championship, though.
Ooh, I don't know. It doesn't feel like it to me. I think they're gonna limp their way into the SEC. But we shall see. On the flip side, Oklahoma State. By the time Kansas State comes into town on October 6th, night game, 7:30, I think that might be a huge early Big 12 where the conversation will be: is this a Big 12 title game preview? Between the Wildcats and Cowboys in Stillwater. I think I'm pounding the over. This just screams over. Where we're like, oh, Alan Bowman was healthy and he was back to Texas Tech Bowman and he didn't have to do as much because they just run the ball down your throat. The defense is good again, and the lunch pail kids for Gundy's group, and I think it would not surprise me at all if they hit the over. I'm optimistic that it's a bounce back year for the Cowboys. Give me the over for them. Are you optimistic about Gundy's group?
I mean, it's 6.5. Do you know the last time Oklahoma State won less than 7 games in a season?
Gundy's first year?
2005. Is that Gundy? That is Gundy's first year. Yeah, like this team, they're good enough for I probably should have hammered this one earlier because 6.5 is just too low. Like a bad Big 12, a bad Oklahoma State team, I feel like goes 7-5. So yeah, give me Oklahoma State to go over.
Yeah, it's just weird. Like they've completely reimagined who they are as a football team. Like they're not the run and gun of old, but I mean they were still 21st in passing offense last year in the country. So Spencer Sanders did enough. It's just weird that he ended up departing from this group because I think it really worked for him. But I think a lot of Oklahoma State is going to be what that defense looks like because they were 89th in scoring defense a year ago. And that's just not what we've come to know about these later years Gundy teams. So if the defense is cleaned up, I think they're going to run the football. I think they're going to put their guys in good position to succeed, and they'll make it through. Texas. 9.5, the same as the Sooners, which is just so bizarre to me. But lock of the century, putting the Horns over 9.5. You don't win over 9 games this year, Sark. We have some problems with this group. Quinn Ewers, huge year for him. You have the best receiving core in the conference. It's not even particularly close. Yes, you're replacing Bijan Robinson, but like you have some talented guys behind you. You're going to have a good offensive line. The defense is loaded. You have a great DC. You have just talent out the wazoo. You bring in AD Mitchell. I don't see an excuse here. Like Isaiah Nair is healthy. Like that's a big thing for them this year. There is no reason Oklahoma or Texas should not win the Big 12 and be right in the thick of things for the college football playoff at the end of the year. If you don't win at least 10 games on this schedule, something went really, really wrong and you underachieved in a really, really embarrassing fashion, Texas. Like this is your year. No excuses.
How much of this is squarely on the shoulders of Quinn Ewers?
I don't even think he doesn't have to do all that much. Like this defense is going to be really good. They have dudes everywhere. Just put the ball in the hands of your playmakers. Like you have dudes everywhere. Make it easy. Just give the ball to your yak guys.
When you have these great wide receivers, but AD Mitchell was never a yak guy at Georgia, and I don't think Xavier Worthy, as much as he's like a deep threat, he doesn't feel like as much of a yak guy. Like
Isaiah Nair is a yak guy.
So I mean, obviously they have great receivers, and that's going to make the quarterback's job easier, but you still have to give them the ball. It's not like necessarily leaning on the running game. They could potentially lean on the running game and maybe they're not as good as they were with Bijan Robinson, but they're still good. But I feel like so much of it, of them actually being the team they're supposed to be, feels like Quinn Ewers being the guy he's supposed to be. So there's kind of this narrative about their 2022 season that they were going to beat Bama. Quinn Ewers got hurt, and their whole season went to garbage. And it's like Quinn Ewers missed like 3 games. Maybe he was dinged up, playing not at 100%, but he had a lot of games that were kind of, a little whatever, like not great showings. So he's got to take a step up. I feel like he's going to, but so much of their success just hinges on him actually being the guy he's supposed to be. And we've seen flashes, but we haven't seen him, put it all together. 15 touchdowns, 6 picks a year ago. Like he played 10 games. So there's a long way to go. But I think he's got the talent to do it. And I feel like AD Mitchell, you definitely threw him out there. He feels like the one that's a little under the radar because Xavier Worthy, he had his drops last year, his hand issue, but AD Mitchell, I'm not sure people understand that, like the true number one receiver that they're getting from him, because Georgia was a run first team, or quote unquote a run first team. They obviously stay balanced, but this guy only played as a true freshman, really. Like he played a couple games last year. I don't know if people have seen just how much this guy has improved from being a really good receiver as a true freshman in 2021. So he could be potentially better than Xavier Worthy on the other side of the field.
That's fair. So are you going over?
I got to. I think I feel like this is their opportunity to beat Alabama. I don't know if I'm predicting them to beat Alabama, but they still get that one loss in conference, that one mulligan if conference if they do lose to Alabama. So I feel like this team 10-2 feels like the floor for them this year, or else, like you said, we're gonna have to start asking questions about Sark. Like 9-3, yeah, maybe there's no hot seat talk at 9-3. It's just very disappointing because you're not really contending for anything. If they go 10-2 and one of the losses is Alabama, like they'll be in the Big 12 championship, and there'll just be a vibe around the program that they're moving in the right direction. 9-3, I feel like wouldn't do that, but I do like Sark, and I think Texas is going to be the team to beat in the Big 12 this year.
I like it. TCU 7.5. A lot of people are thinking this is going to be a big come back down to Jesus year for them. Bring in a lot of transfers with the Alabama wide receiver coming in there. Chandler Morris, the guy who started last year before he got hurt, and Max Duggan took over and ran with it, becoming a Heisman finalist and playing in the national title game. All-time great year from Max, but I think they overachieved in a big way in year one, and they're going to do the weird year two drop-off because Sonny Dykes was so ahead of schedule. I think this feels about right. I think they're a 7-5 team this year. I'm going to hit the under on TCU. I think a lot of other schools, like if I'm going to take the Oklahoma State, Kansas a little bit, Kansas State, Texas, who I think is going to win a lot of games, I'm like, somebody has to fall down a little bit for this to work. And I think TCU they're going to be bowling. It's not that big of a drop off, but them being 7-5 would not be the biggest surprise to me in the world. So I'm going to go 7-5 in the under for the Frogs. I think it's going to be a rough comeback down to reality moment for them.
Yeah, I'm really curious to see because I think they're definitely going to come back down a little bit. But I mean, this team did just play for a national title.
Yeah.
Like they've been really strong in the portal this offseason. And you look at the schedule, like I feel like this is an easy 6-0 start. Like TCU's not great, but like Colorado at home, Nichols at Houston, SMU, West Virginia, at Iowa State, like that's not the most difficult schedule to start off. And then you got BYU at home the next week. Like that, potentially a 7-0. Like I think they should be better than most of the teams on their schedule. But it all depends on how those first 8 games go because their November slate of at Texas Tech, Texas, Baylor, and at Oklahoma, that's kind of a gauntlet for the final month of the season for them. So they could potentially start 8-0 and finish 8-4 or something. But I think I'm leaning towards the over on TCU. I think they're going to come back down, but I mean, to go from national title to 8 wins is a pretty far drop. So I don't think they go any further than that. So give me the over.
Trey Sanders going to be the lead back there. They only return 3 guys on offense as a whole. They lose. I mean, it's pretty wild just what TCU is losing in production. Top 2 leading rushers, top 3 receivers, and 3 linemen from that last year's squad. So
Sonny Dykes, top 10 coach in America, sir.
No, I don't think I can do that. But good coach. I wouldn't put him in my top 10. But yeah, I don't know. I think this is a group that takes a step back. So 8-4 wouldn't surprise me, but I'm going to lean 7-5. And it gets wonky and they lose some games they shouldn't. I'm not a big Chandler Morris guy. Texas Tech, 7.5. Kind of the forgotten team. Joe McGuire recruiting really well, sneakily. Top 25 recruits and done well in the portal. Have Tyler Shook at quarterback a year. He's back. Year 2 for him. In the system, they brought in the Western Kentucky staff to lead the offense a year ago when they were doing that awesome stuff with Bailey Zappi and company 2 years ago. This is a big year for them. I think they're going to be under the radar. I think if you were to tell me, you were to look around who is kind of like that sneaky, nobody's talking to them outside of Oklahoma State, Texas Tech. They're right there. I would not be surprised, Matt Green, if Texas Tech won 11, or excuse me, not 11, if they won 8 or 9 games this year. Would not surprise me in the slightest. I'm going to go over. I'm going to buy some Texas Tech stock. I think they're going to have a good year, and I think they're trending in the right direction. And I think when the Big 12 splits apart, them becoming one of the interesting top dogs, like what's going to happen between them and TCU year over year battling in the state of Texas will be fascinating because I think it's going to be kind of a war for the top talent in the Big 12 for those two.
Hey, don't you forget about those Baylor Bears, sir.
I don't think I don't know.
But they do have Oregon at a conference, but they get them at home. So that's probably a loss early in the season. It is at home, so, we'll see. But I feel like I hear more and more people talking about Texas Tech, that they're a sneaky dark horse. And I don't know. I feel like I'm not buying it. So they were fine last year. Obviously, the Western Kentucky influence could do a lot for their team next year. But I look at this schedule and I see a lot of losses on it. I don't see. I think this team goes bowling. Not a lot of losses, but the eight wins that seems like too many for me. I don't necessarily see them being better than a Kansas State or something. So I feel like that's someone I can actually rely on. I feel like they have a lower floor or a higher floor. I feel like a Kansas State, but I mean it's definitely possible. But at Baylor, at Texas, at Kansas, we've talked about they could be a dangerous team.
They're winning one of those games.
That's what. Hey, they got to go at West Virginia too. They got to go into Morgantown. Yeah. You never know. They be burning couches.
14 starters back as a whole, man. 14, and they won 4 straight to end last year. I don't know, Zach Kitley's offense. I'm a fan, and they're playing Texas Tech football the way God intended. Like I'm not sure there's a guy who is more suited to run the Texas Tech offense than the Western Kentucky guy. Like that's That is some good
They
stuff.
do avoid Oklahoma next year too, but I don't know. I'm not buying it. Give me the under on Texas Tech.
Wow. I can't do it. I think they're going to be really good. Give me the Red Raiders. West Virginia, 5.5. I don't even like they're hitting the under. Like, this is over. Neil Brown's getting fired. Maybe Dana Holgerson goes back to West Virginia. I don't have a strong take on this. They're going to be bad. Like, he's calling the offense again. Graham Harrell's out. He's now the OC at Purdue. JT Daniels was like that last dying breath of this program getting back on their footing. I think they need a change. I think this is going to be sad. You're taking shots at like beating Penn State by 2 scored. Like, all of this reeks of just a absolute dumpster fire of a season. No, the West Virginia Mountaineers are winning less than 5.5 games this year.
The game I didn't know I was going to be juiced for until last year was Pitt at West Virginia. I'm all about the backyard brawl, so I'm loving that we're getting that in week 3. But yeah, at a conference at Penn State and Pittsburgh, taking on the whole state of Pennsylvania, and I don't think it's going to go well. Also, they got Duquesne. I want to say Duquesne is in Pittsburgh, if I'm not mistaken. So all 3 at a conference are against the state of Pennsylvania. But yeah, and then just the typical Big 12 schedule from then on out. They do avoid Texas, but yeah, I don't see a way that this team goes bowling next year. So I'm gonna go under as well.
I mean, unless you're a big Garrett Green guy, I just don't know. I don't know. They were 9th in the Big 12 in points allowed last year. I don't know. Everything about this schedule and what this team's going to look like just screams they're going to be bad. So no, give me.
And I feel like that's what you could count on in recent years, that their defense, especially their secondary, seemed to be pretty good most years, or at least opportunistic, force some turnovers, and last year the defense they didn't even really have. So it's one of those things from Office Space. What would you say it is you do, West Virginia? Like, you're not playing offense, you're not playing defense. You need to figure something out.
There you go. Well, Big 12 done, Matt Green.
Yeah, and we got enough disagreements on there to make it interesting. That's for sure.
I like it. Next week, do we do ACC or do we do Big 12 next week, sir? Or excuse me,
Pac-12. I think we should go Pac-12 next.
Okay.
Or actually, Pac-12's sexy this year. Let's save the Pac-12. Let's go ACC next.
Okay. I like it. Matt Green, always a pleasure, my friend, and I will talk to you next week.
Well done, nephew. Chase Thomas Podcast. Hell yeah.